Publicist, a PR person, so important for your production. Why would you start thinking about it during your production phase?
Yeah, like you might think that's definitely for post-production and release. I don't need to think about that for months. But the thing is, good publicists are few and far between. There aren't that many film publicists out there, particularly for documentary films, that are going to help you make the biggest splash you can. So you need to start thinking about it now.
So Mike, let's tell everyone, what does a publicist actually do?
So a publicist gets you free PR, basically. They get your stories in the mass media. So this could be on television, on radio. Radio is super helpful and important. It could be about getting your film reviewed. It could be about getting it, published on digital publications, in magazines, podcasts, the list goes on and on. Anything to do with getting your film out there into the media, your publicist is going to do. So a publicist's key skill set then is about having lots of contacts in the media, being able to communicate with them through things like media releases, but also just pitching one-on-one, picking up the phone. They should be really good on the phone, writing lots of emails. They need to be well organised. They need to be teeing up your talent, your interviewees, maybe yourself, for doing interviews with the press as well. They might even be involved in events, particularly premiere events.
You've got to meet them early, make sure they're the right fit, someone that you're comfortable working with, and you've also got to make sure they're available because a publicist that we've been working with on quite a few of our releases initially thought she'd be available for our upcoming film release, and then she wasn't. And so quite late in the piece, we had to try and recruit a new publicity person, which is a bit of a process. It took a while.
So when a publicist is working on the release of your film, it's really important that they've got a clear window around the release itself because it is very labour intensive, pitching stories and managing media. So if they've got other projects happening, if they're juggling a lot during that period, it's not going to benefit your film. So you actually need to ask them that question when you're recruiting them. What else have you got on during this release window?
And we have learned also on this production we've got coming that we've engaged them much earlier, unintentionally really, but we feel like we're going to have a much better result because the first press release is actually going out 2 months before the film is releasing, which gives lead time to all those sort of more old school publications who need that lead time to run a story. And so that's actually giving us that opportunity, whereas often our publicity person is coming on board, sometimes even only 4 weeks before release, which just doesn't have time for that.
Yeah, and I think good TV and radio producers are planning their content out a long way in advance. So pitching a story that's 2 months out from now is actually totally fine, and for a lot of media organisations will be happily met.
Magazines, print magazines, they need it.
But even TV shows and radio shows that are more in depth, you need to give them that amount of lead time. Now there's some short lead media that you can still get and that your publicist will be pitching that hard, in that week leading up to release, but not all media fits into that category. So I think there's a real benefit of starting early here. They also need a lot of materials from you, don't they?
So we talked earlier, in an earlier episode, we talked about production stills. They will need a really good quality selection of production stills. They will need bios, a poster, absolutely, bios on all the key creatives and the key cast members. They will need a press kit. So all of these things kind of come together as a press kit. And usually
key art, trailer, maybe some raw material for people doing a longer story.
Definitely raws for the media. That is, if you're doing any kind of news, morning breakfast, any of that kind of thing, they need those raws.
And that means less edited, without music, without graphics, stuff they can cut into their stories.
Yeah, if you can get that package ready in advance, it means you're not caught off guard last minute trying to prep it on a Sunday afternoon, which is never fun.
It's also going to need a lot of your attention. You're going to need to be carefully reading the media releases, probably closely editing them, supplying quotes, connecting them with talent so they can do interviews with the media. There's a lot that goes into it, so you need to allow time for all of those things to happen.
So our advice is get your PR person lined up as early in the process as possible and then you're going to have the best opportunity to attract the best quality media for your production, and hopefully it will go gangbusters and it will be awesome.
And that's why we're bringing it up now during production, because we think you guys actually need to start engaging your publicist now at this point, and we'll come back to this again in the post-production part of this.
Absolutely. So stay tuned and come back next week. We're talking more about production, and soon we'll be getting into post-production because we've nearly exhausted everything we could possibly talk about with production. So hope you've been enjoying this, and check us out over at moonshinecommunicationsacademy.com to find some more resources.